Donald Trump's nomination of Pete Hegseth as Secretary of Defense sounds like something straight out of one of those wild political dramas we saw unfold in the last administration. A Fox News commentator, Army National Guard veteran, and Trump loyalist, Hegseth is by no means the typical choice for overseeing the largest bureaucracy in the United States, let alone coordinating its nearly $1 trillion budget, an entity that many an auditing firm would have nightmares tackling. This is what happens when Trump decides that experience and qualifications are synonymous with fierce loyalty and ideological alignment. Because, after all, to drain the swamp or reform the Pentagon, depending on perspective, why not hire another talking head from the very media machine that galvanizes public support for his policies? What better place than Fox News, a platform that has proven effective at pulling economic and military matters into overtly politicized territory? The implications of this nomination ripple beyond mere political showmanship. We need to unpack what this motion signals for the U.S. economic trajectory, from how the ever-expanding national defense budget intertwines with domestic and global economic trends, to how this merging of political loyalty and military leadership impacts long-standing financial strategies, not just for the Pentagon, but for those sectors heavily reliant on U.S. defense contracts. Let's break it down point by point and shine a light on the deeper economic issues swirling in the background. First and foremost, Trump's nomination of Hegseth underscores an ongoing intensification of the U.S. military-industrial complex, which isn't exactly great news for anyone worried about the long-term health of the U.S. economy. Blessed with a mind-boggling $840 billion annual budget, one of the few U.S. government pillars that enjoys bipartisan support for continuous expansion, the Pentagon has ballooned into what might just be the ultimate too-big-to-fail entity. Keep in mind that this budget doesn't even include Veterans Affairs or the nuclear weapons duopoly, under the Department of Energy. Now, what does Hegseth's nomination mean in economic terms? Trump has made it clear that he expects the new defense secretary to usher in radical changes. Given Hegseth's ideological alignment, these changes likely include diverting more defense funds toward initiatives perceived as essential to countering rising foreign threats, i.e., Russia, China, Iran, but also cutting out perceived woke policies. This push means even more spending on advanced technologies, think more contracts for companies like Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Raytheon, and SpaceX. The defense budget has already swelled to astronomical levels with little accountability, and yet we see little discussion of the potential economic distortions this causes. These enormous defense outlays crowd out other important sectors of the economy, like healthcare, education, and infrastructure, as they consume an ever-growing share of national resources. But what happens when the pushback arrives? As Middle America continues to feel the weight of inflation, rising interest rates, and stagnant wages, the Pentagon's unchecked budget risks becoming a significant source of economic friction. The current debt crisis in the U.S., exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic stimulus, has already pushed federal debt beyond 120% of GDP as of 2023. Saddling the U.S. economy with nearly a $33 trillion national debt, continuous deficit spending to fund endless military advancement and strained social programs leads to difficult choices: either implement painful austerity or continue borrowing. The Federal Reserve has already begun ratcheting up interest rates to fight inflation, making deficit finance even costlier. Still, Trump's track record shows a preference for ramping up military budgets while offering voters tax breaks, without providing a comprehensive plan or increased revenues to offset them. In a Hegseth-directed Pentagon, we could very well see intensified lobbying for yet more advanced tech, even if it means cutting corners elsewhere. The dilemma is this: can the U.S. continue unrestricted defense borrowing without risking economic collapse under the weight of national debt that now climbs by trillions annually? We might as well call this the new military Keynesianism. You focus on defense and security as the backbone for job creation and economic growth. But historically speaking, such policies have diminishing returns, and when you throw all your economic eggs into one basket, you risk a crash. We saw it with the post-9/11 wars, with research now making it clear that for every dollar spent in defense, these efforts didn't provide nearly the same multiplier effect as investments in education or healthcare would have. Perhaps most telling about the Hegseth nomination is how neatly it ties into Trump's apparent coziness with corporate America, above all, Elon Musk. Trump has publicly made clear his admiration for Musk's entrepreneurial daring. With SpaceX now among the most critical private contractors for both NASA and the Pentagon, Trump's endorsement of Musk shouldn't be dismissed as background noise, especially in light of Musk throwing his weight behind Trump's electoral ambitions. For Hegseth, managing these relationships poses one of the most overt potential conflicts of interest between private enterprise and public accountability in recent memory. SpaceX, for example, has gobbled up billions in defense contracts. They're launching not just rockets, but also the prospect of a future where U.S. defense innovation relies increasingly on a privatized space industry, eroding the wall between government oversight and corporate discretion. By awarding key contracts to Musk and company, what we're witnessing is a pivot that integrates the Pentagon's future into the hands of a few powerful corporate giants. We've heard discourse about public-private partnerships echoing from boardrooms to think tanks in Washington, but what does this really mean? First, it opens the door for an even deeper entanglement between politics and economics, turning U.S. defense into a big business where monopolistic practices could rule. This has profound consequences for competition, or the lack thereof, in these sectors, with the result being higher prices for everyone. Taxpayers foot the bill, while defense contractors rake in profits. Let's talk about the bigger elephant in the room, the "America First" slogan that reverberates not just in political rallies, but in broader national economic policy. Trump's way of framing financial development has always been about favoring homegrown industries while restricting foreign competition. On one level, this makes sense from a political strategy point of view. However, economically, Hegseth could double down on protectionism policies that hobble free trade networks, thereby straining global partnerships and investment flows. Right now, the U.S. is in the midst of geopolitical power struggles with China and Russia, and escalating trade wars or curbing globalization could backfire massively in today's hyperconnected financial world. Consider the recent debt ceiling negotiations. Will a Hegseth agenda Pentagon drive America further down the rabbit hole of expansive military funding at the expense of diplomatic relations and trade growth? Anti-China sanctions, tariffs on European allies, and new isolationist trade policies could redirect much-needed money away from sectors that generate broader economic prosperity inside America's borders while fostering rivalry abroad. Finally, U.S. military policies rarely look at how defense jammed into the economy impacts labor markets. The Pentagon is unquestionably the largest single employer in the world, with over 770,000 civilians and about 2 million active service members. But Hegseth represents an administration committed to shrinking diversity initiatives in the armed forces, which also weakens the talent pool and business productivity. Closing these programs risks alienating disenfranchised workers, pushing boundaries in labor policy in a shrinking job market. Not only this, but the very nature of the job market structure could evolve under Hegseth's leadership. Wearing multiple hats and running one of the largest economic foundations of the country means making hard calls which could result in job cuts as automation and military technological advancement expand. While Hegseth's candidacy plays perfectly into Trump's vision of loyalty and protectionism, its implications on the U.S. economy, from the distortion of budget priorities to its bloated military-industrial complex, could be profound. We're looking at the potential for heightened national debt, further entrenchment of corporate oligarchs in the economy, Elon Musk, and a military-first administration that takes cues from the media's most ideological wings. Propaganda sells wars, wars demand military products, and military products demand a bloated budget, which, all too predictably, hurts everyone when the bill finally comes due. Consider this commentary a warning signal about the broader economic risks under new, radically political leadership at the Pentagon. Critics need to pay close attention to how these seemingly internal shifts could gradually push America closer to economic imbalance, and eventually, recession or financial instability. Stay vigilant, my friends, and make sure you're straightening out those portfolios. Another storm, not just military, but financial, is always brewing.